sir. You're about to see something really special.
Really thought this part of my life was behind me. Frenzy disappeared with the drinking 3 years ago. Why now? This makes no sense, and I'm right on the verge of freaking out.
Back from your life.
These people can be animals.
What you burn.
Thingy's out.
Some bitter things you should never.
Good cheese.
Learn. Wallow through the days.
Remember, cosplay's not consent.
So here's to me. Congratulations, me. Yay, me.
This would all be so much easier if I was hammered. Hammered.
Won't be there
Right.
You can take away the anger, but you leave behind the pain. It's your soul I
New ventures are always scary.
feel till I'm melting
Blah, blah, blah. Something positive and uplifting.
tomorrow. But the hurt will still remain. In your soul I'll live forever till I'm melting in.
Don't miss our new film, The Love Song of William H. Shaw, coming soon to a streaming service near you. Hey everyone, this is Clif from Talking Pondo. Just wanted to give you a quick heads up about spoilers on the show. We do talk about the films in a certain amount of detail, so you may want to watch the film first and then come back if you're not a fan of spoilers. Also, every now and then there's a little bit of adult language, so we wanted to give you fair warning on that. We hope you enjoy the episode, and we really appreciate you listening.
Welcome to Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where we pick out 2 movies each week and talk about them in detail. Making Pondo is a podcast where we talk to people we've made films with and we discuss all their experiences on set.
All right, and we're back, Marty.
We're back.
Yes, sir. Episode 27.
We never left.
No,
We've been here the whole time.
we're always here. Always.
We were here before, we'll be here after.
We are the alpha and the omega of the
It's
podcast.
the theme of today. You know, you add 2 and 7 together, you get 9, right?
Mhm.
What does that have to do with anything?
which is the power, which is 3 cubed.
Oh,
Which is
okay.
the secret number, the ancient number, the power number.
And really, I think our first movie I'd like to talk about this week, Predestination, it was about 3 people. Now, of course, spoilers, okay? If you already should hopefully know that this show is full of spoilers, and if you have not watched this movie and you have any interest in it, just pause. We'll be here waiting.
Pause, watch the movie first.
come back to us,
Yeah,
'cause
because this
it's
is like
weird
talking about the
enough I don't
Sixth
wanna mess
Sense or
it up.
something. Yeah, it's like talking about the Sixth Sense. You can't talk about the movie without kind of giving away the coolness of it, the secret of the movie, I guess. Right.
Mhm.
So we're gonna jump right into Predestination. You're 60 seconds into the podcast, and you're like, "Fucking, I'm feet first into this movie." All right,
Yeah,
well,
'cause
hit it,
It's about time.
hit it. Go for it.
Wow.
So first off, I want to say before you get started, this movie, we were talking about movies at work, and this guy, my buddy Bruce Garrick, who works at my job with me, he suggested this movie. He kept talking about, like, you got to see it. It's the best time travel movie ever. It's the best movie about time travel ever. And I was like, boy, that's a big mountain to climb there, Bruce. Like, there's a lot of good time travel movies out there, but he was adamant that this was it. So.
Now, it's funny how this movie that came from outside of just me and you actually fits in the theme of some of the movies we've already covered. It ties into the other movie we'll talk about here in a bit amongst friends a little bit. But one of my first notes was, I'm having Ed Wood flashbacks. Here's another movie they're talking about Christine Jorgensen in. And it's only been, like 3 or 4 weeks since we did Ed Wood. It's just strange how those predestined coincidences seem to keep happening. Now, I had to pause the movie about a half hour in because I'm just sitting there going, this is I know there's going to be some twist or something. What is going on here? This guy walks in and he starts talking, just casually telling
casually telling his life story.
That's all evenly keeled and everything. Then you realize this is a short story written by Robert Heinlein, and it's like, oh, okay, so watching this probably feels like reading that strange short story and the ideas it's trying to evoke. And so, as far as a literal adaptation, I'm guessing I bet you it's probably pretty close. But as being a short story, probably not meant to be a movie length, so you get a little weirdness. And as always, my radar's going, what is off about this movie? Ding! This is Australian. Here we got another Australian movie to go hand in hand with Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and Road Games. I think those were the only other Australian movies we've done so far. Right. And boy, did they do a really good job of almost making me think that this was a Hollywood production.
It was close. It was close.
Very close. Very good on that.
Yeah, very close.
And then once you get deep into it and you start to get some of the twists revealed to you, because it's all this time travel thing, from the same guy who wrote Project Moonbase, all you Misties out there. And it kind of makes sense to me when I compared the two in my brain. You start to forgive the person comes in and tells the long-winded, perfectly eloquated story because, spoiler, they're just talking to themselves. Well, just one person. And don't try to think about it too hard. It's just kind of, like the song plays on my own grandpa on the radio over and over again.
Right.
What a weird, like if you like Twilight Zone or strange things like that, I can see why somebody would say this is the greatest time travel movie of all time, because it's like one of those core 50s type sci-fi story, with those classic elements in it. And it's like, at its core, I can, because it sits in your mind and you just think about it all weird. But
I'll say the same thing. I thought about the movie long after I watched it.
I mean, how do you even describe what it's about? Because I've forgotten things.
Here's the IMDb summary. As his last assignment, a temporal agent is tasked. As his last assignment, a temporal agent is tasked to travel back in time and prevent a bomb attack in New York in 1975.
Oh yeah, that's what
the hunt, however, turns out to be beyond the bounds of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie is all about trying to catch this bomber called the Fizzle Man, who is blowing things up and killing people, and this one temporal agent who's chasing the Fizzle Man, but also at the same time, the beginning of the movie for 50 minutes is about this person who goes into a bar and tells this long story about being a woman who had a kid and then lost her organs and somehow had an operation to become a man and is now a man and is now stuck in this sort of being a male. And it's just like, okay. Mm-hmm. And then that's the first 50 minutes. And then suddenly here comes the time travel stuff.
Yeah. And then not until you get towards the end of it that all that early stuff starts to kind of
pay off.
Make sense.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, of course, because obviously they're giving you hints the entire time, but you're going, is it really just going to end up being that? And yeah, it ends up being that.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had to create some kind of super agent who was basically out of space and time, who could change things and didn't matter what happened to them. I also looked at it as a classic kind of, see, you can't go back and change the past because you're altering so many other things that might have been horrible that would have happened if you had stopped this. And so which is worse, to stop this catastrophe that was going to happen, or this catastrophe if I let it happen?
That's an interesting take. Okay.
So you go back to the chicken and egg thing again, but he was, as their bad joke said, he was the rooster.
Well, and see, to me, that was part of the problem of the movie. Was I had a problem with, it seemed like a temporal loop that he was stuck in.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because he ends up at one point picking up the baby and taking it to the orphan. He goes back in time and drops it off at an orphanage. So he's sort of creating the loop himself. He's recreating this constant loop of him being born, having sex with himself, which is, if you haven't seen the movie, I'm sorry, but that's fucking what happens. He has sex with himself and then has his own baby, steals his own baby, and then goes into the temporal agency and becomes a temporal agent who then travels too much and becomes crazy and then becomes the Fizzle Bomber.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just repeats itself on a constant cycle of him trying to break the cycle. He leaves this tape hoping that the next,
very memento.
the next instance will, break this cycle. Yeah. And it's, it's not going to happen. It's just going to continue to repeat.
They give you one of the most valuable clues right in the beginning, where he's all, my own mother wouldn't recognize me. He's all messed up, and it's like, oh yeah, because I forgot about the plastic surgery bit, which meant he was Ethan Hawke, he was the baby, he's the baby,
he's the woman, he's
everybody but the woman who worked at the antique place selling the typewriter.
Exactly.
And he wasn't what's the Johansson or Johnson or the guy in charge of it, Robertson, or who was
Robertson?
Yeah,
Robertson, I think. Yeah.
He wasn't that guy either. If you like Quantum Leap and you like, just weird mind.
It was a bit of a mind fuck of a movie. Yeah. It was a bit of a mind fuck of a movie. I mean, my biggest problem with that film was that it took 50 minutes to get going.
Oh, of course. But I'm sitting here laughing my ass off like there better be something.
Like, why am I watching 50 minutes of this sort of sob story of this?
Because he's the writer, right? He's the pulp writer, which, it makes sense. It's the Robert Heinlein,
Yeah. Well, and that's I guess that's kind of part of it, is that there's this whole bet of, or tell me the saddest story you've ever heard.
Yeah.
And so you watch it in the beginning going, is this kind of a ruse? Blah, blah, blah. What the hell does this have to do? Predestination? What movie am I watching? Okay. And you just kind of keep watching it. And it does some clever things. Like it does. I definitely like the idea. I like how they played the sexes. It's weird to watch a character basically seduce and have sex with itself in a weird way. That still I'm thinking about in terms of just like, God, that's weird. But at the same time, it's also kind of plays on a psychological level where he's like, I won't leave her, I love her, and it's kind of like protecting your past self and from keeping, I don't want my past self to be harmed like I was, that type of thing. So there's a weird psychological level going on, but it's a really strange fucking movie.
Yeah. And I got to hand it to them. They did very well with keeping it must have been a limited budget. You only have a few sets. You only have a few actors. Doing that bar scene that is so lengthy, that must have helped.
Oh, it saved a lot of time. Yeah.
Like, oh, well, we get Ethan Hawke and we got Sarah Snook, and they're just chewing the scenery like it's almost like a fake play. And but it does, just sitting there for a half hour, 45 minutes, just going, what? This is so... But still amused, because it's like, okay, well, where are you going?
It's still good storytelling.
What are you?
It's still good storytelling, but it's like, what is this? What am I watching? And smartly, I like the way they handled the tech. They handled the tech in a very they obfuscate the tech. Oh, it's just a violin case, and you set the ears on it. No need to know what's in it or how it works. You work for an agency. It's very black hat 1950s. Even though it's set in the 80s, it's very, it's very Hoover FBI-ish type shit.
Right.
So it lends itself to this kind of weird alternate universe, this strange sort of aesthetic. It takes forever to get going.
A movie about time takes a long time.
Yeah. Now, once it gets going, it does some cool shit. Like it really pays off. I mean, I think it pays off. It pays off better than The Sixth Sense. Like I could watch Predestination again and again and go, oh, there's that. Oh, look, there's another hit. Oh, there's another
thing. It's all going to connect. I doubt you could go through that movie and find anything where you're like, hey, this doesn't make sense. It's like, probably no. It's telling you constantly this is what's going on. If I went back and watched it right now, I'd probably be like, yep, you yourself, I me mine.
Yep. So this is directed and written by.
What is it? The Beatles lyric, "You all, we are, and we are all together."
Yeah, I am you and you are me and we are all together.
Yeah, it's this movie.
So directed and written by the Spierig brothers.
Yeah, brothers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, I didn't look too much into their filmography. Have they done anything else that we know? This movie's
they
already
did-
10
they
years
did-
old.
They did Jigsaw.
Oh, really?
Something called Winchester, Daybreakers, short called The Big Picture. I haven't seen much by them, honestly.
Well, it's definitely
I
a
think
weird one.
This is the first film I've ever seen by them. Yeah.
Yeah. Came out of left field. Brought Ethan Hawke to the show before I had a chance to. Yeah. Pretty weird movie, man. Yeah.
It was. Yeah, it was.
It's good. It's just so odd.
It was an odd friggin' film, which
But
I
you
think
want that,
well, yeah, you want a unique film. You want something that's gonna, if you want a unique film you haven't seen before, this is it. A $5 million budget.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty damn good for a $5 million movie.
And it makes sense, right? Because there's sets where the bar, the outside in the park, kind of the training camp for the Space Corp place.
Yeah, all easily controllable spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
Cast
easy to
was
get to.
relatively small.
Yeah, they stayed away from a lot of outdoor road shots or having to show a lot of things that would establish like a time period, so they didn't have to build like elaborate 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s sets. It was pretty fucking well done, honestly.
Yeah. They had all their wardrobe correct, all their different time periods, and like all that was stylistically correct.
I'm shocked, honestly, that it was made for $5 million. I thought it would have been
Wow.
10, 15, 20, something like that. It seemed like a bigger budget film than that.
You would think, why would this be swept under the rug? Obviously, there must have been not a whole lot of a P&A campaign, and if people can't hear about it because it's not being advertised, then it just slips through the cracks, because it's a pretty interesting movie. I suspect it'll be, for all I know, it already does have a cult following, for all I know, but I hadn't even heard of the movie until about a week ago. So
yeah.
I think it'll continue to find an audience, though.
I think it will. I think it's interesting. So it's based on the short story "All You Zombies," of course.
Oh yeah, that line comes in towards the end of the movie.
Yeah. I think part of the problem is that Looper had come out pretty recently to this.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
And Looper did a I think a little bit more of a mind bendy job of doing time turn, and this is more of a subtle. This is more of kind of like a slow burn time travel movie. Like you get to the end and you go, oh, that's okay. That's really well done. And it is, it's a well done movie. It's like it pays off. It does what it does correctly. And it looks good. God, especially for $5 million, my whole opinion of it racketing through my head is completely changing, because for $5 million, dude.
Yeah. Especially for that
to do a period piece. I mean, and again, now it's making even more and more sense why they spend 50 minutes in the bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I that's what I'm thinking. I bet the short story is just them. Half of it is probably them in the bar, just telling the story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And usually you would change that and you would see the story happening, but you need to have the character telling the events that happen rather than seeing the character go through the events, because it won't.
It's a ton of exposition
up as well.
Yeah, it's a ton of exposition early on too. So it's like, yeah, but yeah, I mean, surprisingly, like I said, overall, I enjoyed it. I didn't think I would. I thought it would be one of those movies where I'd come in and go, hey, yeah, okay, greatest time travel movie ever, sure. I'm like, it could be in conversation for top 10, easily.
It'll always be but have you seen Predestination?
Yeah, or 12 Monkeys.
Which I thought was called Redestination, and it took me a bit to find it until I realized.
Yeah, I just think there are better time travel movies out there.
Well, yeah,
for sure.
It felt more like a Twilight Zone, like a 50s type sci-fi story.
Yeah,
it's a throwback, but it was fun.
I keep expecting somebody to make a movie out of that one Twilight Zone episode where the person's trying to have their surgery, you know, they come out of plastic surgery and they look like a normal, beautiful human, and they're all freaking out about it because they don't look right. And then, you know, at the end of the film, the doctor turns and they've got this crazy ass like pig face and shit. You're just like, oh, damn. Keep expecting that to become a movie at some point.
Mm-hmm. So, wow. I know we didn't do much of a preamble. We did just kind of jump right in.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job pulling in Ethan Hawke did well in the movie.
He was a good actor. Yeah, he really pulled it out. Sarah Snook was fantastic.
Right. That's who really had to carry
Mm-hmm.
the load, basically playing the dual roles at one point, talking to yourself back and forth. You know.
Yeah, it's tough. She was good. She was really good in it. I thought it was, like I said, for $5 million, it's definitely well made.
So, you know, this is what happens, you know, after 30 years of Back to the Future being the pop consciousness, somebody decided, I'm going to make this version of Back to the Future, the one you always thought about. What happens if that happens? Well, then you become your own person. One of the only is it incest if it's you? I don't know anymore.
And viewers, that's the weird part of the movie that you're going to have to deal with. Is that at one point you're just going to have to
it's the twist.
I kind of want to spoil it, but I kind of don't. But at the same time, you're going to have to deal with the fact that there's some weird ass shit going on sexually in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange. And it's all just sort of hand waved in the film. They just kind of hand wave by it. Like it's, you know, that's fine. That's what you need for the plot to work out. You know, that's what you need for the time paradox to work.
Oh, so the whole movie's just a masturbation allegory? Because it's all one person.
I mean, it
coming up with stories to get off and
maybe I don't know.
Trying to get
And then so I
putting
had a
the
baby
movie on
and
the psychiatrist's couch and analyzing the movie. Tell me about your
Jesus.
mother. Oh, I mean, tell me about yourself.
My mother was myself. My mother
I'm
is
my own
myself.
mother. You turned around, it was the same person standing there, right?
Dr. Dennis Leary. Shut the fuck up by Dr. Dennis Leary. Next.
Wow.
Well, I am my own mother. Shut the fuck up. Sorry.
Well, I will be thinking about this movie on and off from time to time because you know it's good when you have a story that sits there and goes, aha, here's a sci-fi twist that you're going to have to.
It's a weird, very creative time paradox.
Mm-hmm. Like Terminator, people try to discuss that one.
I haven't seen anything like it before. Like I haven't seen any filmmaker attempt it in that manner before. It was very fascinating.
Inspired by many of the classic time travel movies, but it combines them in weird ways.
They definitely did their own thing with it. Yeah. Yep.
What was the movie rated? It was rated R.
I believe it was. I believe it was R.
Just a little too bizarre to be PG-13.
Yeah, I think it was rated R. Yep. So from 2014, it runs an hour and 37 minutes. It's got a fantastic rating on IMDb, and I can see why.
That's so far ahead of itself.
Yeah,
it's very. This movie would be coming out now.
Yeah, very far ahead of itself, and it does this. You can't say it's a transsexual movie, but it does this weird gender bending thing.
Yeah, it's just a human existence movie.
Human existence change thing where it's just like, this is wild.
What was the song on Lost? You, all, everybody? Or whatever.
Yeah, I can see how some people would say that, but it's just, that's not really what the movie's about.
No.
You
think, but that's red herring, right? It's actually much more complicated and deeper.
Much more complicated and deeper than that, yeah. That's a solid 3 for me, man.
Yeah.
That's a solid 3. I mean, I wouldn't watch it all the time, but if it came on and I was like, oh, that's right, I'd watch it easily. It's a decent movie.
Right.
You know, some of the dialogue is a little especially early on.
Mhm.
But once it gets going, it really delivers.
Because they're telling the story about the
It's just it's a
world and
lot of exposition and setup early on. But all that pays forward, every bit of it. Marty's thinking.
yeah, I did 3.5.
Wow, really? Okay.
Because it's just strange enough to where,
It's
and then
just
I go,
unique and strange,
okay,
yeah.
because it's the writer. So
Mhm.
much like in our movie, it's
Mhm.
all I can start to forgive that heightened, almost cheesy dialogue of the because it's like, oh no, is this really happening at this point? Or is he just typing? Or you can interpret it so many different ways that it just since the movie just sits there in my head. So
Mhm.
many movies we watch on here, I'm like, oh yeah, we
Yeah.
watched that one. You don't
Yeah.
think about it, even if it
Yeah,
was
that's
good.
very
But
true.
this one is just odd enough to where I'm going to be like, okay, you did a very good job there, indie filmmakers in Australia from 10 years ago. 3.5.
Yeah, it's a fantastic idea. It really played well. Again, it's 3 for me because I won't go and seek it out and watch
Yeah,
it
I'm
again
not
and again.
necessarily putting it on either. I'm
But
still watching it, I feel like.
it was a good film. Yeah, good
Mhm.
film. Yeah. All right, so that leads us into the one that you gave me, which was Amongst Friends.
Amongst Friends, triggered by swingers.
Yeah, why I have no idea. Directed by Rob Weiss, written by Rob Weiss. What's the tie to swingers on this?
Well, as swingers, when we were discussing that one, where I was coming up this lineage, where it was like Soderbergh, Linklater, Tarantino, Rodriguez, Smith, and then Favreau starts to break out after that. You go all the way back to just after the Soderbergh era, and then Rob Weiss was like the hot kid at Sundance with this movie in 1993. Cut to a few months
You're
later,
kidding me.
cut to a few months later, and then here comes Clerks and basically knocks him out. See, Rob Weiss was, not to get too gossipy, but Rob Weiss was dating Shannon Doherty during the time of Mallrats, and so him and Smith have always been kind of at each other. This is why Smith is bagged on Entourage, and etc. But I just find it interesting, like, oh yeah, because this was made in that world where you were only reflecting off of Scorsese or John Singleton, for that matter. We haven't gotten to the 90s where Tarantino and Smith would come out, and then everybody starts like, oh, this is how we smooth it out. So we get this. This is one of those weird early examples of, oh yeah, this is where they thought the 90s were going, but in reality, it ended up going this other way. Now, I don't necessarily enjoy the film, but I thought this would be the only time to really talk about it and have any reason to talk about it. It kind of felt like something we would have watched in the middle of the night on cable back then, especially things like that blunt passing sequence, where it's like, it reminds me of like Marijuanos in that respect.
3 bored Long Island buddies seek excitement on the streets with perilous results. That is not the fucking movie that I watched. It isn't. It isn't.
No.
I mean, this is a I can't. I'm shocked that this was the darling of Sundance or the darling of anything. It's a terrible fucking movie, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not good. And it's funny because Rob has kind of been making the same thing over and over. He's just been kind of perfecting it.
Yeah, he found this niche later.
He found a niche later with it. But, at no point is this film believable. At no point does it feel real or genuine. At no point are these characters like there's no, who the fuck are these 3? There's no discussion about who their parents are, where they come from. It's just like, oh, I grew up in a rich neighborhood with a lot of rich dentists and mobsters. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what's the rest of it? And it's just, it's a Bronx Tale meets Goodfellas meets budget filmmaking.
Yeah. It's just an example of how they thought it was going at that point, and then it's like, no, it's going more Clerks, Pulp Fiction, and then things like Amongst Friends becomes completely irrelevant and hard to even find a copy of until recently. Yeah.
I mean, I think for good reason. It's
Mhm.
not a good film.
No, it's not a good movie. We don't always
Yeah.
bring good movies on to discuss
No.
them. I thought this was more of a weird curiosity piece than anything. At least it's not even an hour and a half. It's shot well.
That's its saving grace. Is that's an hour and but on screen it's got I counted. It's got about 4.5 minutes of credits. So
Mhm.
on screen you're about an hour and 23 minutes, which is pretty brutal.
Mhm.
Even at that, it's pretty brutal. The dialogue is rough. I mean, there's literally a dude that says, "Why you dissing me, bro?"
Well,
And
that's
then the
why
other
I feel
dude
like you have
goes,
to
and then
experience.
the other dude breaks into a racist tirade about talking like N-words. And you're just like, oh man, you guys want to be Tarantino so fucking
Mhm.
bad.
And yet,
You want to be Scorsese so fucking
Yeah.
bad. It's Mean Streets is already done, bro.
Mhm.
Don't.
Yeah.
Oh,
not in any of my 5 towns. I
no,
thought that's
yeah.
funny that speech that's later Johnny Drama is saying is actually in this movie. Yeah. I did not see this movie until about a year or so ago.
I've never seen it up until I watched it a couple days ago, and
Yeah.
I'll never watch it again.
Oh yeah,
Ever.
there's no reason to watch it more than once.
I'll never watch this fucking. And how they dragged Amira Sorvino into this fucking film is
Right?
beyond me.
Isn't that bizarre? Yeah.
It feels like a definite case of self insertion where Rob, who wrote it and directed it, is like, I'm going to tell the story about me. It's like, dude, you did not grow up like this. Nobody fucking grew up like this. This is ridiculous.
It is kind of bizarre how like when he finally hooks up with Doug Ellen and they do Entourage together, it's like, okay, now we're taking the New York characters and putting them on the West Coast, but we're mixing it in a way where we're taking out kind of the unrealistic, you're not really that street part, and they kind of benefited each other's writing, I think, when they collided at that point. It's just weird when you go back and see just the oil without the water,
I mean, I think, the more I go back and watch Entourage, the more silly it seems to me. And this kind of fits right in with that. Like it's within that, like, disconnected from reality, trying to create reality vibe, where it's like, dude, nothing happens like that. Nobody, what the fuck is this?
But
I'll say this. I'll say this. He definitely knows how to craft the visuals of a film. There were some nice shots. It looks good. It's edited well. It sounds good.
Sounds good.
It's just a bad fucking script.
Well, yeah.
Like, it's just bad content to shoot. Like, shoot anything else but this piece of shit.
Well, see, I look at it and I go, oh, if only Marijuanos had looked and sounded this good.
It felt the same. It would just be just as bad. It's just the same thing.
Well, that's why I felt the kinship with the, oh, look how far you've come from what was the first movie. But it's kind of like the opposite of Swingers in that respect, because it's early 90s and it thought it was, the trajectory was one way, and but then strangely enough, he did find his way back to a career by the aughts with Entourage and later Ballers. So he found his path. It was more through TV than film.
I think when you look at that early 90s stuff, which, one of the things that I was watching about this movie, it made me think about this early 90s kind of avant-garde cinema that started coming out. And it doesn't even start in the 90s. It starts in the late 80s with
exactly.
It starts in the late 80s with
Sex, Lies, and
Videotape, right? Which is this great indie film. We'll bring that'll come up easily at some point. But then that moves into all this other sort of filmmaking that happens. Kevin comes out. You got Robert and Quentin and all these other, small time filmmakers that are really making a great ton of stuff. Here's the deal: most of their stuff has withstood the test of time. And this thing is crumbling under the weight Like it's just
example of
like
when it's frozen. Yeah.
yeah. Well, it's just this should not have been the darling of any film festival. When you watch it 30 years later, you realize how terrible the fucking thing is. It's not good. It doesn't stand up at all. It's a bunch of pretty boys trying to act tough in a movie with really bad dialogue that's supposed to be about the mob but kind of isn't supposed to be about the mob, and the only thing I'll say is like he made some good choices where like he decided to film the early years in like a 16 millimeter sort of grainy film stock, and then he moved into the 35 millimeter and that type of thing, and that had a good effect. But for the most part, it was just it
was also told
not well done.
It was told in that narrator, kind of like Predestination, of people telling stories about things that happen. Which is that's what made me think, oh, it's got that John Singleton vibe, like where we were trying to do a Boys in the Hood thing too, where, oh, let me tell you about the party where I went to and all this shit happened and blah blah. And it was kind of I'm trying to.
So many of the things that we did, so many of the mistakes that we made with that film, he made. So much exposition in that film, talking and talking and talking about characters that you didn't know and you didn't really care about. It's a weird fucking movie.
But had we been flipping through the channels early 90s at 2 a.m. and come across that blunt passing sequence, we might have in a haze watched the rest of that film.
I mean, look, that's and honestly, that I was thinking about that when I was watching the film.
Not necessarily enjoying
this is one of those films that I'm so tired of the pot use in films. I'm tired of watching people like, oh yeah, man, smoke, and let's get high, man, smoke, and then you've got those two idiots.
Old representation.
You've got the two idiots on the couch. No, it's still prevalent everywhere. The two idiots on the couch that are rapping back and forth and laughing because they're so high, and then for some reason, like the two dudes are having this deep conversation out on the patio, and one of them just suddenly just whips out a glass bong and starts doing a fucking bong hit.
There's so much of that,
come
right?
on, man. Come on.
That's the type of stuff where I was like, oh, this feels like the
why even fucking bother? It's so fucking cornball. Hey, man.
They actually got to do it. So.
Put the weed in there, man. Just make sure you smoke, want to smoke a bong. It's fucking dumb, dude. I'm so tired of that representation of weed, and it's so prevalent and it's everywhere and it's fucking boring. I can't believe I'm saying this. I sound like I'm whining about weed representation, but it's just a trope. It's such a trope of like, oh, there it is, the stoner, or there it is, though of course they got to smoke the bong and chill or whatever. It's just
it is so interesting boring to see graphics bongs in movies. You don't see that too often nowadays. But think about it in 1993 terms. There was obviously some stoner stuff, but there was also some, we're just having a conversation while I'm smoking weed. And you didn't see a whole lot of that earlier. That was some of the stuff I liked in Entourage later on, where it was like, oh, realistic. They're smoking a joint, but they're having a conversation about shit. Maybe that's when the two...
to me, that doesn't really feel realistic to me. I don't know.
Well, it's not realistic, but compared to it's like, oh, somebody's smoking a bowl and they're talking to somebody, and the focus of the scene is not the bowl.
Yeah, it just feels kind of forced. I don't know. To me, I'm starting to reach this weird place with weed in movies where I'm like, if there's not a specific purpose, like having a drink at a bar or something, then why? It's no different than suddenly it's all Mad Men, where everybody's just got a glass of fucking whiskey in their hand while they're doing their business deals.
If this movie was made today, I'd feel that way. But as an artifact of 1992, I look at it.
I'm talking more in general about how weed is represented. It's just kind of like, I don't know. I guess that's the whole thing with me.
It had a score by Mick Jones and Big Audio or Bad Audio Dynamite.
It was a decent soundtrack. Yeah. There was a lot of, you had Peppers, you had
maybe that's why this movie disappeared, because of the soundtrack.
Yeah, that's possible.
Apparently, I've seen the movie twice. Them Bones by Alice in Chains is in the credits. I did not hear this song anywhere in the movie. I was specifically listening the second viewing So I thought that was odd.
No.
When I watched it on Tubi a year or so ago, it was not this HD copy that's on the MGM streaming now. So at least you got to sit through a HD copy of it. But yeah, it's very 90210 hairstyles, very much of its time. Still feels very, it's like the 80s hadn't quite ended yet. And boy, were the 80s about to end, because it was all going to switch within a matter of months. So
It's like the Bronx Tale meets Goodfellas meets Jersey Shore. It's just another in a bad string of gangster movies that came out after Goodfellas. You know, and they were everywhere, and which got me thinking. There's only a handful of decent gangster movies out there. There's maybe
hard to make a
10
good one.
tops. You know, and this is just
we made a bad one.
not in that pantheon at all.
And when you look at it from just from historical filmmaking perspective, it kind of falls into the theme of some of the movies like Hollywood Nights, where it's like, oh yeah, person out of time once again, not realizing that time period has ended and the new time period has begun. Hey, it's predestination. It was meant to happen that way. You were supposed to go on to create Entourage, Rob Weiss, so be proud.
I mean,
Don't worry about this movie.
You know, it definitely feels like a personal movie for him. It's just not a good. It's just not a good movie.
That's true, but a lot of movies like that don't look good and they don't sound good or have good editing. So
That's very true.
Like, well,
No, that's the part
right
of it that's the part of it that he did right. It looked good. It sounded good. You know, I don't know how much money he spent on it, but I imagine it wasn't much.
Yeah,
so,
that
you know,
had to have been a scrap.
He definitely pulled that off. So he spent. Apparently, the budget was $1 million.
So that's like nothing back then, right?
Well,
because you got all that film costs and shit. So
yeah, but you've got Kevin shooting Clerks for under 40, and this dude shooting this thing for $1 million, which is probably back then more like probably 5.
Yeah,
nowadays.
That's right too. Yeah.
This should have been
curio.
This should have been a bigger kind of vehicle for him, I think, and unfortunately, it's not a fucking good flick.
No, that's why weird things like this tend to disappear. But
if there had been more buildup about why Billy hated the other
Billy
two
again,
why did he kill Trevor? Why did all that? You know, it just they sort of alluded to it at certain points, but it was never spelled out, and it was.
And then we're just going to leave, you know.
Yeah, it was so vague. It was so vague in points. I know. Not a good movie.
No. Almost makes you glad we didn't make, you know, our 90s gangster epics back 30 years ago. They'd probably be on par.
They would have been like this. Yeah, they'd have been on par with this. Yeah, very much so. That's so true.
Yeah,
that's so true.
Didn't even have this one on my radar to bring up, but then when we were talking about swingers and all that and how, you know, what they call mumblecore now kind of came in, it was like, oh, now's the time to pull in this anomaly way before we ever get to like the Entourage movie or anything like that. So just more like a
mumblecore, really? That's what they call it, mumblecore?
Isn't that what they call the Richard Linklater heavy dialogue movies?
I have no fucking idea. I don't pay attention to that. I don't know. Yeah. Mumblecore, wow.
But it's like, yeah, what would the film world look like if Tarantino and Smith don't break through in '94? Where do you go? Do you get more Scorsese, Soderbergh type things, or do we then skip forward to, you know, say Robert Rodriguez? But he popped through. God, because Mariachi's more like '91. See, my timeline's all messed up. But is the world just Jon Favreau's oyster at that point? Who knows? These are the things that keep me up late at night, people. When I'm watching Amongst Friends on Amazon Prime. With limited ad breaks. And, you know, I'll say this about, well, it wasn't those ad breaks, but this is also something that I'd like to address momentarily. I was watching things on YouTube, and almost all the commercials are fucking AI voiceovers at this point. And I'm just
of course they are.
I'm screaming at my TV like, fuck you, AI, give a voiceover some work. But thankfully, when I was watching Amongst Friends on Amazon Prime, There was no AI voiceover commercials, I don't think. So at least they haven't got there yet.
Thank you, Amazon.
That
Prime.
was a total tangent.
So 1.5 stars, Marty.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. 1.5. Like I was saying previously, if 2 stars means I like it and up,
Yeah,
but 1.5 is kind of like, no, I don't like the movie.
Mm-mm.
I don't hate the movie. The movie's got a lot of issues. But I look at it as well, that's a strange little piece of film history. Huh. Okay, so that's who that person was, and now my brain fills in that part of the story from the evening of Kevin Smith. So
The first line of this movie is, I fucked a 20-year-old when I was 12 years old.
oh, was that really the first line of the movie?
That's the first line of the fucking movie.
Oh my god!
And
Well,
from
you
there,
might have to give it an extra half star.
it only gets worse. So the kid literally admits to being sexually assaulted when he's 12, and then proceeds to go on and agree that the girl told him it didn't last long enough. And he's like, yeah, she was right, but nothing does, because that's how life is.
And see,
And
we're
then
already,
the movie starts, and it's just like, oh my god, dude.
we're
really?
already telling the story through flashback, right from the beginning. Much like Predestination.
If that's what you want to take from it, okay.
I'm
What I take from
I'm
it is
grasping,
like, what
man.
the
I'm
fuck,
grasping.
dude? I hear you. I'm
we got an hour
grasping. I'm grasping. Oh my god, that got me. I'm grasping. Oh shit. I'm sorry, folks. I apologize. Anyway, it's not a fun film to watch. It's a little aggressive and pretty gross at times.
Mm-hmm.
And for some fucking reason, Mira Sorvino's in it. I'd avoid it like I avoid COVID, or any
she
other
doesn't have
sort of
much of a
plague that's on the
character
earth.
arc,
No, she had no fucking. She was just there to be the girl. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Just there to be the girl. You know, which matches with a lot of what Entourage does later on, which is just, I'm just there to be the girl. I'm just there to be the thing, the object. You know.
No, they have a little bit more to do than the Mira Sorvino character.
I hear you, but
Storyline
still,
basically ends with her weeping because dude got killed.
Yeah.
I will say when he does get shot, that was very disturbing because he's all like, "Grrr," trying to breathe, and it's like, oh my god, that's why they don't depict it that way in film, because it's too unnerving.
There are moments in the film, like when he fights the dude and then says put the gun down and all that. That's intense stuff. It's really well done. It's just surrounded by so much other bad stuff that you can't really jump the pools of goodness to avoid all the getting your boots and all the sticky, nasty, terrible shit that's there. And there's really not, like, honestly, dude, the best acting is from the old men who are playing all the gangsters.
Yeah, that's true.
And that shouldn't be. The most believable character in the movie is the old man who's going, you know what else is good? Zinc. And you're like, that's a genuine character right fucking there. There you go.
Yep.
Right from the beginning, that guy talks so fucking fast trying to emulate this. It's so much of this
Goodfellas, right?
emulation. Yeah, it's so much of it.
There was the Goodfellas rant in the Swingers, and they even redid the shot. And so here's another example of trying to do Goodfellas.
I mean, look, I think that the reason that Swingers pulls it off is that they reference it.
Right.
They reference it in the movie, but
instead,
amongst friends, it's like, let's just do a whole Scorsese movie. Right. It's like, no.
Because Meta hadn't come around. The age of irony still hadn't hit. So, yeah.
I don't know.
So, Predestination. That was a movie about a guy who buys a typewriter and starts writing some stories, right?
That's right. Writes some stories about a woman who has a baby and is single, and they're called confession stories.
Amongst Friends might have been written on a typewriter as well. Or an early word processor.
So what do you have for me next week, man?
Okay.
That was insane.
Yeah, well, there's only one of those. There's only one Amongst Friends. So, and I wish they hadn't called the movie Amongst Friends, because when the guy finally says the line, it has no weight because it's the title of the movie and it sounds corny.
It's that, oh, there's the tie-in. You know, it's like hearing somebody say something like, I told your mother. I told your mother. It's that, you know, that where you're just like, oh my God, how many times have we got? Anyway.
So yeah.
What do you got for me?
Okay. So Amongst Friends bumped one of these movies. It was kind of like a small series here, and now it's going to be shorter. As the time of we're recording this, we're getting ready to go to Mad Monster Party, Arizona, like we like to do every summer. And so let's get ourselves hyped up by looking at some of the more obscure but probably still interesting or fun entries by some people who might be at the con. And so I'm going to go back to movies about making movies, and I'm going to give you 1999's Bowfinger.
Bowfinger?
Because Jamie Kennedy is one of the guests. And what better movie to watch than the movie he made with Steve Martin and Eddie Murphy? So,
well, that's an interesting choice. It weirdly kind of butts up with my choice.
yeah.
So I'm going to give you, let's see, Bowfinger. Got to write that down real quick. Perfect. So I'm going to give you 1995's Swimming with Sharks.
Swimming with Sharks. Wow.
Uh-huh.
I've seen that before. That's a good one.
I think in the age of so basically Harvey Weinstein's conviction was just overturned in New York City, and I feel like this movie is very timely for that, as far as watching an asshole in a filmmaking in the filmmaking business get what's due to him,
right?
Basically.
Come back into the world of movies about movies.
Yes. All right. Well, that's be a nice palate cleanser. Bowfinger's what, 93?
It's either from 99 or 2000.
Bowfinger?
I can't remember the exact. Somewhere around then.
99. You called it. Yep. All right. Well, cool. I'll make sure to watch those.
Yeah, back to 1999, where we last were with. What was the 1999 movie we watched? That was. Well, Almost Famous was from 2000, so we're going back to kind of roughly that era. And then also 95 is right around the time of like Priscilla and movies like that. So.
Yeah, it's good for us. We've been living in the 80s for a bit, so.
Oh yeah, like I might have mentioned last time, I'm after Dudes. I'm not taking you back to the 80s for a while. Also.
Yeah, I've got a couple of interesting 70s picks coming up, and also some stuff after the 90s that should be interesting. So.
Yeah, we're going to be bouncing all over the place. I think I'm mostly living in the 90s a little bit here, but I got some other weird wild cards coming up. So,
well, and for our listeners, viewers, Jesus. So for our listeners, we're also going to be kind of changing the format a bit coming up. A few episodes down the road, probably 8 or 9 episodes down the road. So look for some changes. Some experimentations. We're going to do some different things, bring some guests on, do some interesting stuff. So
yeah, basically that. Bring some guests on and see what they think about movies a little bit.
They think about movies. Yeah, it'll be fun. So we have a subscription thing. If you guys want to subscribe to us, you do get to pick a movie if you subscribe that we'll watch and we'll talk about. So that'll be fun. But yeah, other than that, anything else, Marty?
You can't pick Amongst Friends.
Yeah, no. And we're not doing any porn. Don't send us like Behind the Green Door. It's a classic. No, it isn't.
Giving people ideas.
Yeah, don't send us Caligula. We're not going to watch it. All right. Well, that was a short one, man. You dived feet first into Predestination. You could not wait for that shit.
Yeah, I didn't want to do it because I wanted to see how long we could stretch because if we did Amongst Friends first, we might talk about that for 5 minutes and then.
Right.
So.
All right, man. Well, until next time.
Experiment in time travel next time.
That movie. All right, man. Talk to you later.
Later. support the show on Buzzsprout for only $3 a month. Give us a 5-star review on Spotify or the platform of your choice. And be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube page.